Welcome to another edition of Virtual Vino. My name's Alan Emery, and I'm going to be sitting in tonight for Devin, who is taking a break this week. And I have a couple of guests that will be joining me. My co-host today is going to be Bryce Gillespie from Marquee Selections. Marquee is an importer in Kansas City, and they provide DMV with some incredible wines from very small wineries all over the world. At the time Marquee was introduced to me, we really weren't looking to add any wines to our portfolio, but the wines were just so incredible. I couldn't resist bringing them in, and I'm really glad that we did. Tonight, we're going to be tasting 4 wines from the Marquee portfolio, including the Backsberg Chardonnay, which recently received a wonderful review from Dave McIntyre at the Washington Post. If anybody was looking at the Washington Post online today, Dave actually also reviewed our new Corbière that we tasted on Virtual Vino just a couple weeks ago, and I thought he gave it a really nice review. The Corbière also received 97 points from Decanter magazine. Our real special guest this evening is Gustavo. I'm going to pronounce his last name terribly, but I'll do my best. Caligiore. He's the owner and winemaker from Caligiore in Argentina. Because Gustavo has been so kind to join us all the way from Argentina, we're actually going to do something different this week, and we're going to start off with our red wines. So the first wine we're going to taste is actually the Caligiore Reserva Bonarda. And if you have this wine, please go ahead and pour yourself a glass. You can probably tell I already have. And I want to thank all the stores that have been supporting DMV and Virtual Vino for carrying the Virtual Vino wines. And if you find that you cannot purchase these wines at stores, you're more than welcome to contact us and let us know, and we'll help you find stores that do carry our wines, or try to get those stores to carry the Virtual Vino wines. Ideally, when you purchase the Virtual Vino wines, you get these really great wine bags as well. And along with the wine bag, you could also receive our really nice tasting sheet. So hopefully you're able to get that at your local store. The Virtual Vino wines are easily identifiable by our wonderful, thanks Jess, our wonderful tags. Tonight, please don't hesitate to ask Bryce and Gustavo questions. They're really, really well-versed on the products, and I think it's going to be a really interesting show. So please send in questions. Don't hesitate to comment on what you think about the wines you're tasting. So without wasting any more time, let's welcome Bryce and get started tasting some wine.
Alan, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure to be involved.
And Bryce, I'm going to go ahead and let you give us a little background on Caligiore and Gustavo, and then go ahead and introduce him yourself, okay?
Sounds good. So yeah, Caligiore actually, when we look at the Marquee portfolio, is the winery that's been with us the longest. So Marquee was started in 2002, and I believe it was around 2006 or 2007, Marquee started importing Caligiore into the US. So the oldest horse in our stable, the one that we're probably most proud of, we're most fond of, really enjoy the wines. As we'll hear from Gustavo now, they're a fantastic setup in Argentina, really, really cool family-owned winery making some great stuff, and one of the real pioneers in organic wine production in Argentina. There were not a lot of guys doing it before them, and there were not a lot that were bottling their own organic wines before them. So he really did kind of lay a lot of groundwork for what a lot of Argentinian producers are doing now. So it's going to be great to hear from him and hear about Bonarda specifically, which is not really a wine that you see too much of when you think of Argentina compared to the kind of popularity that Malbec has. So I think without further ado, let's bring on Gustavo and let him introduce us and take us through his fantastic wine and the story behind the winery.
Well, okay. Hello.
Hey, Gustavo.
First of all, thank you for the invitation, and hello to all the people that is connected. It's a pleasure for me to show what we do here in Mendoza. As Bryce says, I didn't know that we were the oldest winery imported by, but we started in 2005. Bryce, so it's long time ago.
Okay, good to know.
Yes. Bueno, first of all, asking patience for my English, so I will try to do my best.
Your English is perfect. You have nothing to worry about.
Okay. Bueno, we can start about with the presentation.
Yeah, sure. Let's bring it up.
Okay. Bueno, if there is, I would like to start with a picture of the, and because we will, the idea is to speak about Argentina, and then going down to our winery and the grape Bonarda, and how we manage the vineyard, and then finally the wine and the wine pairing.
Cool. Sounds great.
Argentina is in the south of America. You can see there the bottom country on America, very close to Chile. We are divided by the Andes range with Chile. We are on the east side, and Chile is on the west side of the Andes. But that makes a big difference because we don't have. Argentina is one of the regions with or important wine regions without influence of the ocean, precisely because of the Andes. All the influence from the Pacific Ocean finish at the Andes, and we are completely dry and a desert climate. So we have a rainfall of around 200 millimeters per year of rainfall, which is almost 1/3 the normal winemaking regions. There was first on this file, there was a nice picture of the Andes, of the mountain, Aconcagua mountain, which is the high. Could you that one? This is the Aconcagua mountain, the highest peak in the Andes. It's around 20,000 feet height. The idea here is not only to show the nice picture, but also because, as I told you, Mendoza is a desert, so we have to irrigate all the vines, and the water comes from this snow melted on the Andes. All the water we get for watering our vines and any plant in Mendoza come from the Andes. This is a nice picture of another mount that is called El Plata. It's closer than the Aconcagua. That one, we are going. That one we are showing in the back, and also all the water that we use to irrigate come from this mount. Bueno, we can go now to the next page of the PDF file with some information about Mendoza. Well, here is the rainfall. Mendoza is in the middle of Argentina, very close to on the foot of the Andes, as you can see there. The altitude of our vineyards is between 1,800 feet. Sorry, because we speak in meters, so I have to translate in English and to feet. 1,080 feet to 5,000, 6,000 feet above sea level. This is the range where Argentinian vineyards are settled. Our vineyard is around 3,000 feet. So it's more or less middle altitude in a normal Argentina viticulture. Okay, we can go now to the Mendoza is very important in Argentina because 70% of the wine grape come from Mendoza. So it's the main region in Argentina. We are settled in Luján de Cuyo, which is south area down Mendoza city, very close to Mendoza. Yes, Luján de Cuyo. This is Mendoza city. Luján de Cuyo is a little bit south of Mendoza, between Mendoza and the Uco Valley that you probably know about that. Now we can go to speak to the winery. Caligiore is a very small winery. We are, as I told you, we are settled in Luján de Cuyo. It's a very different model to the regular. This is our winery, the picture, and you see the Andes range very close to us, and where it's around 50 kilometers from our winery. It's a very different model to the normal Argentina viticulture because here we have wineries, and are we are a very small producer. We produce around 100,000 bottles per year, and the particularity is that our winery is settled on the same property, and we elaborate our own grapes, which is not normal in Argentina. It's more, there are big properties or that just produce grape and sell the grapes to other wineries, or big wineries that has their own vineyards. But our model is like a chateau model on France or Europe. It's very, very close to the European viticulture. So we have the winery and the vineyard in the same place. This is very, very different and abnormal in our viticulture. Another important thing is that we produce only organic. Our vineyard and the winery are organic certified. We only produce organic. This is a great picture of the Bonarda vineyard at the end of the season. So that's why you can see the red hojas, the red
leaves.
Leaves, exactly. I was telling you that the Caligiore, we produce only organic, which is also another thing important. It's the way that we understand winemaking. We don't have a line that is organic or happen to be organic in our range of wine. We are just organic. We produce only organic. So it's very important for us how to manage our idea is to produce the better organic wine we can, and to show that you can enjoy great wines makes us organic. That's our idea, that you choose our wine because you like them, but you have to know that they are also produced in another way that is very friendly with the environment and without the use of any pesticide. So it's the only way we conceive to make wine. Bueno, this is a picture that I wanted to show you about a picture of the conventional vineyard and organic vineyard. The organic vineyard is ours, and the conventional vineyard is from another neighbor. But you can see that in the conventional vineyard, you will probably find only grapes, only vines. But instead, on the organic vineyard, you can see the vines living together with many other species, many other plants, herbs, and that are very important for the environment and for the for establishing the natural equilibrium on the vineyard. This natural equilibrium, this biodiversity, is also important because it's habitat for natural enemies of for the pest control. Is very important because you produce a lot of organic matter that in the natural cycle of the composition of that organic matter, you can see many green covers on the vineyard because this produces a lot of organic matter. That organic matter is the composition on the vineyard, and that make the food for the soil life, soil microorganism. This microorganism make the decomposition of those organic matter, and that feed finally the vines. So it's a natural cycle of nutrients. It's the same that you get on a natural forest, for example. The idea is to make the vineyard to be autonomous, to be how to say, autosustentable, to be
self-sufficient.
Self-efficient, exactly. That's the word.
So we have some questions here, Gustavo. When you're talking about the organics, the kind of combined question here is, what is the big difference between a vineyard that is conventional versus a vineyard that is organic? So you've spoken to some extent about how the vineyard will become self-sufficient, but what are the big differences? And then how are pests prevented in an organic vineyard?
First of all, it's the main difference, because the canopy management is more or less the same in the conventional or in a organic vineyard. But the main difference for me is in the soil management. As you can see, our soil are fully covered with green covers during the whole year. And how you manage this living together between natural grass or seeded grass that covers the soils and the vineyard. This is a hard job to do, but this makes the vines grow in an equilibrium. So you don't have big quantities of any nutrients. You have the nutrients in the specific quantity that the grape need them, and the vines and the grape grows very equilibrated. Is that understood? If you, for example, you fertilize with chemicals, you probably produce unbalanced nutrition between all the different nutrients that the vines need. In this way, when you just provide organic matter and promote the microorganism of the soil, you will get the nutrients in the quantity and the time and timely that the vines need them. So it is very important for the equilibrium of the vine. And equilibrium means quality, because in the vine, in grape growing, it's better to speak about equilibrium and not high yield or low yields, because the key point for having great wines and great expression on the grapes is that you have a vine that grow equilibrated.
I think that's a great.
The equilibrium, the balance is the balance between the leaf and the production, so the leaf and the bunches.
I think that's a great way to explain it, that equilibrium equals quality. I like that.
Exactly. That is the main reason. We don't use any pesticide, and we don't use herbicides. So all the control, because as I told you, you have to manage because we can lose on our vision that we need to produce grapes. So we had to manage how the vines live together with the natural grass or the green covers. That means a lot of job, mechanical job that you have to do to keep clean the area where the bunches or the grapes are, and leave the rest of the space in the vineyard for natural or the green or the grass that you have seeded, for example. This is a great job. It's not easy because there is also a competition between the vines and the green covers. Yes.
Got you.
So no pesticide, no fertilizer, chemical fertilizers. So the grapes are completely natural. No, and the idea is to transmit on any glass of wine our terroir, because as I told you, not only organic, but we also have all our wines are single vineyard because come from the grapes from our property, which is the same, the vineyard and the winery.
So how do these principles then translate into the Bonarda, which we are tasting now?
Okay. Well, another thing, finishing the organic speech. So the equilibrium, living together, the green covers with the vines to keep the soil covering. So you promote the microbiological activity of the soils. Biodiversity is very important because that makes habitat for natural predators of the plagues or the insect or the enemies. See, the insects that make easy the control between the plagues. Plagues is okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the natural predators. If you have only vines, you don't have room or you don't have habitat for natural predators. So you have a great problem with the plagues, no?
Yeah.
Yes. Or the pests, more than plagues, pest control. Bueno, this is the main thing. Going to the Bonarda. Bonarda is, for you to know, is in Argentina is the second red grape cultivated in Argentina. We have around 18,000 hectares. It's more like 36 acres of Bonarda in Argentina. It's the second red grape after Malbec. It's a really great variety. It's very plastic because you may have completely different wines depending on the harvest time or the moment of the harvest, depending on the yield, depending on the area. Really, you can have very fresh, light red wines or very structured Reserva and with the aging potential wines. It's the characteristic. You can put so you have the picture of the Bonarda bunches. Yes, that is a Bonarda bunches, typical Bonarda bunches. It's a conic bunch. A characteristic of that is that it's very compact. It's very compact, and the skin is very thin and delicate. So it's common that the Bonarda suffers problem with pests or fungus. Yes, because it's easily attacked because of the thing that the skin that is very thin and delicate. So you have to be very careful on the management of the canopy. You have to have a great possibility of sunlight and ventilation, yes, to achieve the final of the season with great quality on the grapes. Because if not, you will have problem with fungus.
So we can see here on the picture that's on the screen, that's what you've done with these. It's nice and clean at the bottom by the bunches.
Yes.
Lots of airflow, nothing crowding.
Exactly. You see that in this case, as we are organic, we don't use any product to prevent fungus. What we have to do is reduce yields to have the possibility to have less bunches, better distributed on the whole on the vineyard. So you have better ventilation and better sunlight, no?
Yeah.
For example, we are in an area, Bonarda is a long season grape. That means that have a long period of ripening. So in the coolest, in the warmer areas of Mendoza, those ones that are at lower altitude, the ripening is achieved very, very well, but you have higher yields and wines that are less structured and lighter wines. We are in an area which is a higher altitude. I told you about that we are about 30,000 feet. And we are more or less on the limit of the altitude where Bonarda may grow and ripening properly. Because if you go to areas more colder areas, you will have problems because it's a long season variety or grape. You won't be able to ripening properly the tannins, so you will have problems with rough tannins or green tannins. So we are more or less at the limit on the altitude we can produce good Bonarda for wines that are the possibility to be aged. No.
Got it. Yeah.
And
so before you take us through the
lower
tasting,
yields. Yes.
Before you take us through the tasting of the wine, I see there's another question here about how long you've been in the business. And I realized we didn't actually talk about the history of your family and your grandfather and the vineyard and when you started.
My family come from a family that owned a vineyard, but they just sold the grapes in bulk to another wineries. My grandfather owns one vineyard from the 60s, 60s. But I started the winery and we started making wine in the property in 2002 in a very small cellar that was in the vineyard. Was the vineyard warehouse, not the one. No, it was not the winery. It was like a garage of 100 square meters, and we started there. And I remember in this small garage we received the first visit of Marquee in 2005, at the beginning of 2005. So I always very grateful because you always were confident of our job from the very beginning, no?
That's cool.
So we certified our vineyards as organic in 2000 and started making wine in 2002. We are just one of the very first organic producers in Argentina. As we didn't have it in 2000, we didn't have a winery, as I told you. So we had to sell we continue to sell the grapes in bulk to another wineries, but there was not a market for organic grapes in those times in Argentina. So we decided to start making wine. The decision of going to the organic was a decision inside of my family on the way we wanted to manage our vineyard and how we wanted to be careful of our place, no making contamination, preserving our natural resources, being respectful of the environment. So it wasn't a marketing matter or point. It was an internal conviction of how to manage the vineyard, and then it went into the winery. No.
Got it. So why don't you take us through the wine now? Tell us about what it is you look to produce, what characteristics you like to see in it.
We spoke about a little bit of Bonarda. It's very thin skin, very delicate. In the vineyard, you have to be very careful to prevent fungus. This Bonarda we are going to taste now comes from this is planted in 1973, so it's 47 years now old. How do you say parral? Pergola. The training system is a pergola, no?
Okay.
It's a very common training system used in Argentina in the 60s or in the 70s. So it's a pergola. It's not ungrafted vines. So it's the same
rootstock?
Rootstock that is Bonarda, no? The root is Bonarda as well. It's a very, as I told you, we have very low yields, not only because of the organic management and that we need to keep the bunches separated with good aeration and good sunlight, but also because the area where we are, we have natural low yields, and the vineyard is also an old vineyard, so naturally we get these lower yields. We don't do any special job to go to the lower yield, but it's something natural from the natural equilibrium of the vineyard. We pick the grapes for this wine, Caligiore Reserve Bonarda, at the beginning of April, 10 to 15 of April. Then in the winery, here we are looking at the sorting line of the grapes. We pick in small boxes, and then we put on the beans, and the beans go to the winery. Almost immediately, in 2 or 3 hours after pick, the grapes are in the winery and start all the winemaking process. This is very important because this is a moment, once you cut or pick the grapes, all the process of the oxidation or enzymes start to oxidize, deteriorate or lower the quality of the wine if you are not careful. In this case, it's almost just 2 or 3 hours after pick, the grapes are in the winery. So this is very important. Here you see an old press for pressing the skins. Once the Bonarda is in the winery, we have now 2 different kind of Bonarda. We have this Bonarda Reserva we are tasting now, and as you know, Bryce, we have launched in the last year without sulfites Bonarda. We are doing not only organic but also no added sulfite wines, natural wines. Why we decided, as Bryce says, Malbec is the flag grape in Argentina, but we also have Malbec. But I think that Bonarda in our vineyard is one of the great grapes, or the particularly the grape I like most, how it developed in our in our vineyard, and which quality of the wine we get. The same in the winery. You have to be very careful when winemaking because of the skin, the delicate of the skin. So we just do punching downs. We control temperature. We ferment the wine with native yeasts. We don't use commercial yeasts. We want to preserve the identity of the wine also in the winemaking, so we do a minimal intervention winemaking. So we want to fermentation be made for the yeast we have in the vineyard and in the winery. Then we do malolactic fermentation also with the native bacteria. And in this case, in the Bonarda we are tasting today, we do 15% of the wine aged in French oak and small barrels, 200 liters, and the rest of the wine are kept in stainless steel vats for 8 to 9 months. After that, we make the blending and the bottling. So the idea with this wine is to have a Reserva wine because it's structured, has a long mouth, very sweet tannins and soft tannins, but at the same time to preserve the identity of the grape, not to over oak the wine. So the oak is only on the background to round the mouth of the wine. So you will find blackberries, blueberries, or black cherry also as the main characteristic of this Bonarda. Some balsamic, some licorice, some herbal notes. This is the typical notes that you will find in our Bonarda. I see here that it's a little smoky. Okay, that's true because of the small part that is aged in the barrels. So the idea is you will find also the fruit characteristic on the Reserva wine joined with some oak aromas, which is the smoky or some chocolate probably. Bueno, here Gina says that it tastes sweet. That is perfect because this sweetness comes from the tannins. That's one of the things that I love in the Bonarda in our vineyard. Is the sweetness and the softness of the tannins. I think that is the main characteristic. At the same time, it's juicy because it had a good acidity. So that's the key point I love on this Bonarda.
Another thing I want to ask you about is the production on this is pretty small, right? What's the total production of the Bonarda that you do each year?
On this range, we have around 3,000 to 4,000 bottles, more or less, on this wine. Then we have 2,000 more on the without sulfites Bonarda.
Okay, so I need to do
total 6,000. Yes,
to see, because I mean, 3,000 cases is 3,000 bottles is only around 300 cases that you produce that you send to us, which I think is fantastic that we're able to get some of that here.
Yes, of course, the big selling, yes,
yeah,
or the bestseller wines are the Malbec, and you probably will sell 10 bottles, 8 or 7 are Malbecs, and 1 is Bonarda or 2 are Bonarda, but because it's not the matter of the wine, it's matter that people doesn't know a lot of Bonarda, and I think it's a great to go on and to start to taste different things from Argentina.
I agree.
I agree too, and I got to tell you, we're grateful that we were able to get some of the wine because, like Bryce was saying, you make such a small amount, and I really appreciate the fact that we were able to get some for the DC, Maryland area, and it's absolutely delicious. And it's interesting because when I'm looking at the pictures and hearing you talk about the winery, you can almost taste like you're there. You know, it's got the fruit like you talked about, but also that earthiness, and I have no idea whether that comes from the fact that you make organic wines or not, but it really is amazing how you feel like you're there when you're drinking the wine and seeing the pictures. And I really appreciate you coming on, Gustavo, and talking to us about the wine. It's absolutely delicious. And I think Bonarda is going to be one of those up and coming grapes that in the next few years is really going to catch on. And I'm hoping that we're all ahead of the curve with that.
Yes, I think so. No, I think it's a great grape to start tasting, no, for people that is wanted to know more about Argentina. And bueno, I'm happy that what you are telling me, because it's the idea to transmit on each bottle what we do, our place, our terroir, our vineyard. So this is what we want to do, and I'm happy that you understand and you have think in the same way, you know.
And I think it's wonderful that, you know, this bottle typically sells in our area for about $17, which, I mean, to get a wine of this quality under $20 is simply amazing. And it's I just hope people watching take advantage of the opportunity, if they haven't tasted already, to get this bottle, because it's absolutely delicious. And maybe they'll rewatch the video and taste it and see exactly what I'm talking about.
And another important thing is Bonarda, that is easy to pair with many foods because of that soft tannins that make it easy to pair. It's not so you can pair it with pasta, with bolognese sauces, with pizza, with steaks, because that the juicy and the soft tannins and sweet tannins make it easy to pair with many kind of foods.
That's awesome. And Gustavo, I want to thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate the time you provided us. And I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to meeting you once this COVID situation is over.
Yes.
So I think if in case anybody didn't get a chance to see the bottle itself, I'll hold it up close. It's a beautiful, beautiful label, and highly recommend this wine. So thanks again, Gustavo, and hopefully we will be talking again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gustavo.
Cheers.
It was great to see you again. Thanks for leading through us.
Cheers to all. Thank you.
Cheers, Gustavo.
Bye. Cheers.
So that was really awesome and unbelievably informative. I hope everyone learned a lot. I think it's really neat when we can have winemakers on and get into that type of depth. So the next wine we're going to be tasting tonight is, and I'm going to pronounce this terribly, so you can correct me, Bryce, the Uggiano Chianti.
Oh, that's perfect. Uggiano.
Actually, really?
Yeah, 100%.
It's a miracle. So I'm going to go ahead and pour myself some Uggiano Chianti and let Bryce take over and tell us about this wine.
Cool. So yeah, I know we're doing things a little bit backwards here with the reds to whites, but it was great to have Gustavo up front telling us a little bit about his. So we'll just go to the Chianti now. Uggiano, a winery that is owned by 3 partners just outside of Florence, right in the middle of Tuscany. So this wine that we are doing now, maybe Alan, you would show the label of the bottle again, just to the camera so everyone can see it. It's called the Chianti Colli Fiorentini. And that is just the designation of where it comes from in Tuscany. So Chianti Colli Fiorentini is right next to Chianti Classico, inside the heart of Chianti. And interestingly enough, the winery itself, Uggiano, is right on the border of Chianti Classico and Chianti Colli Fiorentini. So this is just, it's grapes that is produced according to the DOCG regulations from that specific area of Chianti Colli Fiorentini. It's 90% Sangiovese and 10% Cabernet Sauvignon. So classic Chianti Tuscan wine. And I was thinking about it ahead of this conversation, how often we can take for granted the Chianti wines that we have available and how spoiled we are with so many other things from all around the world. And we get so caught up in the trap of like trying to find everything else that we forget about the real kind of historical wines, the staples, something like Chianti Colli Fiorentini, that is just superb. Such a beautiful wine to drink by itself, so well balanced, lovely acidity that really allows it to pair with a multitude of dishes, various foods. It's just something so versatile and something so approachable that it's just a real great wine, a real treat to have just on an everyday occasion. And this wine from Uggiano is meant to do exactly that. It can be had from special occasions, anything to down the road to the last Tuesday of the week. Today's Friday, it's the perfect time to open up a bottle of a wine like this. As I mentioned, 90% Sangiovese, 10% Cabernet Sauvignon. It's fermented in stainless steel tanks, and then they put it into large oak barrels, big ones. I mean, we're talking between sort of 3,000 to 6,000 liter barrels, where it'll sit for between 6 to 8 months before being bottled, and then in the bottle for a further 6 months before it gets released. So it's got a lot of time to age, but because it's in those large foudres, those big Slovenian oak casks, it doesn't have a large oak influence on the wine. So what you're getting in the wine itself is just really natural characteristics from the grape, that freshness, the fruitiness, the acidity. That's what Sangiovese brings to the table. It's what Chianti is known for. It's just what makes the wine so approachable. Jess's comment about every day of the week wines are her favorite wines. I have to agree with that. Wine is my favorite wine every day of the week. So I don't know, Alan, you're drinking it now. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. I know it was one that when I tasted you guys in the team with it at the beginning of the year, it was something that everyone seemed to enjoy. Very approachable, very fresh.
Definitely. And obviously we're big fans of this wine. It's interesting because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's a little bit bigger body than a lot of Chiantis I've had, and possibly that's due to the Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's just a fuller mouthfeel than a lot of the Chiantis I'm familiar with, which I think is great. It's delicious, and like all Italian wines, I mean, you just think food when you're drinking it. I mean, it's an incredible. It would be incredible with pasta, but even because of the Cabernet Sauvignon, I think you could have steak with it.
Yeah.
So it's like you said earlier, it's versatile, and really pleased with it. I didn't see this question come up, but I know some of the reps were asking me questions about you, Bryce, recently. And one of the questions they wanted to know is how you got into the wine business.
So, yeah, the way it happened was I'm originally from South Africa, for those of you who don't know. I actually worked at Backsberg Winery, which is the last wine that we'll taste in this lineup tonight, before I came over here to the US and married my wife in Portland last year. But I studied at a university called Stellenbosch, which is in the heart of wine country in South Africa. And I was there for a year alongside with my friends. And in our second year of university, we turned around to each other and we said, listen, we've been in the heart of wine country for a year and we haven't been out to a single vineyard. What's wrong with us? We need to change this. So we said, okay, cool. Every Friday afternoon, irrespective of whether we have classes or not, we're getting in a car and we're going to wineries. And we did it. We held ourselves true. And we went out every single Friday. We jumped in our mate's car and we headed out, only to the free wineries, of course, because we were students. We didn't have money to pay for things like this. Wine is expensive. So we found all the best spots to go to. And we really got like a real thorough exploration of South African wine. And we realized how much more there is behind it. And I mean, like you listen to what Gustavo was saying now about just all the kind of intimate things that you have to think about, all the way from the soil to the air to where the water, the cellar, whatever you're doing. So we just became enthralled with this and fascinated with it. So I ended up working at some wineries, doing some harvests, working at some restaurants and some wine bars. And I kept learning more and more and more and falling more in love with it. And then I just took it to heart, practice makes perfect. So I was like, great, well, if I get to drink more wine to get better at this, that sounds like a pretty cool situation to me. So I just drank lots of wines, learned a little bit about it. And I've been fortunate enough that it sent me around the world. I did a harvest in France. I was in Italy. I came over to the US, which is where I met now the lady of my dreams, and we got married last week. So here I am, and I'm meeting amazing people like you guys. When I got to fly to Maryland at the beginning of the year, and I got to meet you and the whole team, like I would never have dreamed something like this would be possible had it not been for wines like this, which is phenomenal. So yeah, here I am.
Well, that's a neat story. And the one thing I forgot to mention is this wine, typically it's only about $14 in the store. So it is a really, really great deal for a Chianti. And I hope people have a chance to taste it. I know some people are tasting it now, but hopefully in the future people can get it as well. Unless you had anything else you wanted to add about the Chianti, I think we can move on to the Vermentino if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do that. So the great thing about the winery owners, so it was started in the 70s by a group of Bergamo businessmen who were inspired by a winemaker that had trained in France. So a lot of the varieties now, you talk about the addition of Cabernet Sauvignon and the Chianti are as a result of the French school that the original owner's from. Then in 2014, 3 partners I mentioned earlier took over the winery from him. So it was the winemaker, it was the CFO, and the export manager stepped in to continue running the company. And they've really done a great job in pushing through innovation and new routes to the winery and for the wines, but remained true and authentic to the Tuscan hillside, the Tuscan soils, the Tuscan terroir. And that's what you get in the Chianti. And I think what you see now in this Vermentino is just a phenomenal example of like pushing boundaries and trying something new. So Vermentino is a great varietal for people who don't know. So just like Sauvignon Blanc or Chenin Blanc or Chardonnay, Vermentino is its own standalone variety. And it's mostly known on the island of Sardinia, just next to Italy, where it can be quite an intense, full-bodied, they will sometimes refer to it as like a fat style of wine. It's got big structure to it. Now, the Vermentino that's grown in Tuscany along the coastline, it gets a lot more kind of minerality to it, a lot more freshness, a lot more elegance. So it becomes a really, really, again, and I know I use this word a lot, it's a very versatile wine. It's a porch pounder, it's a patio sipper. You can have it multiple glasses of this just by itself, or you can really start to dig into some great food with it, some salads, some chicken dishes, some cured meats, some dried meats. It really just goes beautifully with all of them. And this is another one, Alan, I don't know if we touched on this, that Dave McIntyre from The Post picked up and spoke pretty highly about, which was really, really great to see. And I've been doing a lot of research and reading, and Vermentino seems to be a variety that's really on the rise in terms of people discovering it. So as people are kind of, I wouldn't say tiring, but looking to venture out from Sauvignon Blanc and from Chardonnay, they're looking for new types of exciting varieties. Vermentino is really one that can step up to the plate. It offers you more than a Pinot Gris will do, but it's going to keep things interesting like a good quality Chardonnay or a good Sauvignon Blanc would do, or a Verdeo from Spain. It's just a really, really, really beautiful drinking wine, lots of flavor, good acidity to it. You get a little bit of a note of lime that can come through, which just keeps it interesting. If you're a fan of sort of Latin American food, it pairs very well with those two. A cool little note on this wine, 2019 is the vintage I believe you're drinking now, you're tasting now. It is the second vintage that they've made the wine from their own fruit. So 2018 and 19, they made it from fruit that they owned. Before that, it was grapes that they were bought in before. Now, the reason that they're able to make it from their own fruit now is they've recently purchased another property further south in Tuscany, which is even closer to the coastline than the winery itself, where they're now able to grow their own Vermentino grapes, which is fantastic. So they're bringing in their own estate fruit, bringing it up to the winery, processing it, and sending it over to us fresh and ready to go.
I think it's really interesting. You mentioned when you first started talking about the Vermentino, and I was tasting it at the same time and thinking, gosh, he's way off. And because you were talking about it being a bigger mouthfeel and such, and which I agree with, but there was I was getting so much acidity at the same time, And I was thinking, how is he not seeing it? And then you went on to talk about the minerality and such, and because it's from that region. And it's not like Vermentinos we've had in the past. I've sold Vermentino in the past and haven't had a Vermentino until the previous vintage, which I believe is the 18 that was written about in the Washington Post. And I'm sure he'll write about the 19 as well, because it's absolutely fabulous. But the Vermentinos that you have provided us are much more balanced in my mind. And I think you described it perfectly. They do have that big mouthfeel, but at the same time, they've got great acidity, minerality, and you're right. I mean, you'd be great with food, but you could also sit on the porch and have a great time as well.
Yeah, I think the approachability description. The approachability of this wine that you talk about is, for me, like, we can talk about it. I can tell you about it. You can mention it. Your reps can talk about it. But the proof is in the pudding when you guys completely depleted all the 2018 stock that we had remaining of it. So the stores that have taken it on, I have to say thanks to them. I know that you have them listed in the description of this video. I really want to thank them for the support on this wine and for bringing it on and for getting it out to the guys in Maryland and DC and letting people try it and get it in their glasses on the table.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and I don't want to take too much time talking about this, but I will tell people that it has been a big struggle introducing new wine into the market during COVID. At the very beginning of COVID, people did not want to taste. They would just, the store owners I'm talking about, they were not interested in bringing on new wines, sampling new wines. That has changed a little bit, but they're still leery. And so it's been a struggle, but at the same time, when we have been able to show the wines, they've shown so well that we've had quite a bit of success with marquee wines. And I think that's incredible. And it speaks to the quality of the wine, because I cannot tell you how difficult it is right now in our market to get new wines into a store. And I absolutely don't blame the store owners for not wanting to bring in a lot of new wines, because we can't do wine tastings in the stores. So it's really difficult to introduce new products when people are so completely unfamiliar. And it helps that the Washington Post has found your wines to be so great and written about them multiple times. So that's been a great deal of help. And the fact that the wines are just absolutely outstanding for the price. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, this wine is typically $17 on the shelf, and it's a steal at $17. The balance is unbelievable. And I can tell you right now that it will not last the night. This is a wine that when my wife gets a hold of it, it will not last long. And I just have to make sure I pour myself a large glass before I pass it on.
Yeah, no, when I received the new vintage to try, I said to myself, I need to make a plan to taste it over 2 days. I want to see how it evolves in the glass. I can tell you that plan was flawed right from the start. It didn't last more than like 2 hours. So there we go. That was that.
And so that is the Vermentino, and I'll show the bottle again.
I see we just, there's one question here on the Chianti about the straw bottle. So someone, Alan, you can jump in here if I have this wrong. The straw bottles that you see Chianti in is a very, very traditional way of presenting the wines. In having them, there's no difference in the wine. So Chianti Classico, Chianti Colli Fiorentini, or Chianti Reserva, it's all just different designations for the wine, for where they go and the degree of quality that they were made in. The kind of straw covered bottles just harks back to the early days of the Tuscan hillside and the wine tradition that they have over there. And it's something that I think wine producers these days have tended to steer away from, because a lot of wines in those straw bottles tended to be of the lesser quality designation. So a DOC, or even just what is it? Is it VDP? The French version would be Vin de Table. The Italian one is slightly different, but just a lower entry level wine versus something that guys would aspire to in a higher quality, like this Chianti Colli Fiorentini, which is a DOCG designated wine. So the highest tier of Italian quality that you can get on a wine.
I think that's a perfect answer. There is, the straw basket doesn't change the wine itself, but historically, I would say that it has been a lower quality of wine that's been in the straw basket, and perhaps that kind of hurt the reputation of Chianti, 30 or 40 years ago. But I think that's all changed, and Chianti is a big let in our business.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So the final wine, if you're ready, Bryce.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah, let me get it up here. The Backsberg Kosher Chardonnay. This wine was featured recently in the Washington Post. And we keep mentioning the Washington Post, and I can't tell people how difficult it is to get a wine written about in the Washington Post. We obviously provide a lot of samples to Washington Post and wish that they wrote about all the wines, but Dave McIntyre can't write about all the wines. He has to pick what he thinks is the highest quality, and the fact that he's written about so many of the marquee wines is a huge compliment. And this is another delicious wine, and I think I'll let you speak more about it, Bryce, and maybe also explain a little bit about the kosher process as well. We do have Hanukkah coming up in another, I guess, month and 3 weeks. So it's worth talking about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's really cool that just on the Washington Post thing, it's really cool that we get to chat about our wines all the time, and we get to present them. I can taste with you, and you and your reps can go and taste them out with other guys. But I tend to stick with our wines, right? And then you've got someone like Dave McIntyre who tastes through, I don't know how many thousands of wine has that guy tasted through. He's got a palate of gold. He's definitely one of the higher end wine writers that we look to. So again, like you said, to have him taste so many of our wines and write about them is a real privilege, and we're grateful for that. The Backsberg kosher wine. So as I mentioned earlier in the discussion, I'm originally from South Africa, and I worked at Backsberg. Backsberg is a family-owned winery in the wine region of Paarl in South Africa. And it's been a family-owned winery since 1916. So this year it's 104 years old and run by the fourth generation of the Back family. So this image that you're looking at now is the third generation owner, Michael Back, with the crazy Einstein hair and the pink frame glasses. And what you can't see are his pink and polka dot socks that he wears pretty much on a daily basis as well. And then his son, Simon Back, who's now the fourth generation CEO and owner of Backsberg. He's been running the show since 2015 after joining the team in 2008 and working his way up through all the departments in the winery. The kosher range of wines. So Backsberg is being 104 years old. The winemaker, Alicia Reshner, she's got a really great way of describing the Backsberg wine range because there's quite a lot of different wines. She's like, when you're 104 years old, it's like owning an old house. You have a lot of stuff lying around that you don't really want to get rid of because someone somewhere in the family has an attachment to it. So we have a number of old clients that have been buying wines for us from a long time, and we've tended to keep allowing them to have access to them rather than take them off the table. So inside that wide range of wines, we have the 4 kosher wines. And the kosher range is an homage to the Jewish roots of the Back family. So I mentioned that the winery was started in 1916. The original founder, Charles Louis Back, arrived in Cape Town in 1902 as a Lithuanian refugee. So he arrived in Cape Town, penniless, illiterate, no idea what was going on. I heard a rumor from someone else who had connections to the family that the original idea was actually to get on a ship that was going to Canada or the US. So when he found himself in South Africa, that was already a big surprise. So I can imagine he was clawing and scraping his way from the get-go. But he worked as a dock worker in the Cape Town port, and eventually he found a job in a butcher shop. And the legend has it that someone just walked into the store one day and offered him the opportunity to purchase a farm. So as you do when you run a butcher shop and someone offers you the option to buy a farm, you take them up on that and you do it. So he bought the farm 1916, and through there developed a number of different businesses, of which wine came to the fore during the second and third generation. And the kosher range was introduced, I think, more than 20 years ago now, as I said, as an homage to the roots on that. So the reason why Gustavo joined us today is he's in a pretty similar time zone to us. Unfortunately, Giacomo from Uggiano and Simon Back from Backsberg, I think it's 2 o'clock in the morning where they are right now, so they couldn't join us. But Simon was kind enough to do a little pre-recorded video for us, so he can tell you a little bit more about what makes the wine kosher versus a regular wine. If we can pull that video up.
Hi, I'm Simon Back from Backsberg Estate Cellars. We're standing in our red wine fermentation cellar. Backsberg makes a range of kosher wines, and what makes kosher different is that there's a number of different steps which applies only to kosher wine production. Anybody is allowed to handle the picking of the grapes, but once the grapes get to the cellar and the crushing begins, only observant Jews are allowed to handle the whole process. So the grapes are crushed, they come into the cellar, and we have a mashgiach, which is a religious Jew, handles the entire process for us. Only kosher products are allowed to be used in its production. The wines also go through a flash pasteurization process. In the case of red wines, that's when the wine has been fermented, and in the case of white wines, it's at the juice stage. And all of these things come together to make delicious kosher wines. Hi, I'm Simon Back from Backsberg Estate Cellars. We're standing in our historic vat cellar. I want to tell you a little bit about muvashal and when it comes to kosher wines. Muvashal, the word, actually means to boil, and that's literally what some of the wines went through back in the day. Now things have been modernized somewhat, and the wines go through what's called a flash pasteurization process. So they get heated up to about 82 degrees Celsius and then cool back down again immediately. So it's almost in an instant. In the case of red wines, that muvashal process happens after fermentation, and in the case of white wines, it happens at the juice stage. We manage this process very carefully so that the wines are unaffected and you end up with delicious kosher wines. I'm Simon Back from Backsberg Estate Cellars. We're in our tasting room. I just want to tell you a little bit about our kosher wine range. We do a number of kosher wines. We do, on the white wine side, we do our Chardonnay, which is an unoaked Chardonnay, delicious, light, fresh and crisp. We do a sparkling wine, which is method cup classique, so that means it's made in the traditional champagne style. It's a blend of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. On the red wine front, we make two wines. We make our Merlot and we make our Pinotage, a classic South African grape. And both of those wines are very lightly oaked. They're medium bodied, they've got wonderful fruit and are really delicious.
Bryce, he mentioned the Merlot and the Pinotage, which are also wines that we carry at DMV and are terrific as well. And I got to tell you, it's hard to get me to bring in a Pinotage because I've had some rather unpleasant experiences in the past. But the Pinotage that Backsberg produces is wonderful, and the Merlot as well. So I'll let you speak more to that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, Alan. Like when I walk into a store or to anyone who I'm going to be talking to Pinotage about, I've got to suit up. I've got to put my armor on. I've got to put my elbow pads and my helmet because I know people are going to come back at me hard on it. It's unfortunately a variety that took quite a hit just after apartheid ended in South Africa, and the export sanctions were lifted and producers were allowed to send wine overseas again. A lot of bad stuff found its way into the market. So a lot of the critics tasted this and there were some pretty terrible things written about it. But in the last sort of like 10 to 15 years, as winemaking has improved and people are really understanding how to work with Pinotage a little bit better, you're getting some really, really great examples of it. Now, for people who are not familiar with what Pinotage is, it's a crossing of Pinot Noir and Cinsault. Two different grape varieties, Pinot Noir known for its elegance and finesse, and Cinsault just known for its hardiness and ability to grow really, really easily. So the idea was to kind of cross the two plants together to get the elegance and finesse in a way that suits the South African climate. The reason it's called Pinotage is Cinsault at the time in South Africa was also known as Hermitage. So the professor who created the blend, or the crossing, gave it to his students as a competition, and they took the Pinot from Pinot Noir and Tage from Hermitage and combined them. And that's where we land up with Pinotage. But yeah, very fruity, very fresh, very light and approachable, a little bit of structure from neutral barrels. But Alicia, the winemaker, she's really, really got it down to a T on how it's made. It's quite fascinating to walk into the cellar and see her handling it. But I think, like you said, we're able to offer up a really, really good sort of gateway to the variety for people who might be a little bit hesitant towards it. And then, I mean, Merlot is Merlot. If we put the Sideways movie out of our heads, it's a fantastic wine to drink. It's really approachable. It's smooth. It's easy. The sparkling brut that we do, also one that Dave McIntyre picked up in the post. Really, really beautiful wine, fresh. You could have it for celebrations, but I mean, really, it's kind of an everyday aperitif. It's just a beautiful wine. And then the Chardonnay, which we have in front of us now, like you heard Simon say in the video, unwooded, fresh, beautiful, beautiful example of it. You get really nice acidity and structure to it, but the fruit, the Chardonnay fruit from the Paarl region, it's got a good structure as well. So the wood's not there to kind of overwhelm the flavor characteristics, but you get that nice kind of like flabby fattiness that you're used to in a Chardonnay. It really comes to the fore in a fresh and approachable way, which I really like. Because personally, I'm usually not a fan of unwooded Chardonnays.
And I'm the opposite, because I really, really appreciate the unoaked Chardonnay. I've never, and of course, everyone that works with me thinks I'm completely insane, but I've never gotten the concept of all the oak in Chardonnay. And I feel like I want to taste the grape. I want to taste exactly, what it represents and all that oak in my mind. And of course, I'm obviously wrong, because Chardonnay is the most popular grape, at least for the white grapes, if not all the grapes. And most Chardonnay is oaked. But this is absolutely delicious, and you can actually taste the wine and taste the grapes, as opposed to getting a mouthful of oak, which is, again, you and I differ on that, but we both agree that this is a wonderful wine.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of a wine that's made well, that can appeal to both people, to both sides of the aisle, which I think is great. It's not often that you'll find a wine that can cross the dividing line like that.
And I see Tatiana mentioned that she's having it with, and I'm going to pronounce, well, I'll just say with tilapia. And I don't think you could have an oaked Chardonnay with tilapia. I think it would overwhelm the fish. And that's what I really like about unoaked Chardonnay. And this is a great example of unoaked Chardonnay, is that to me, it's a lot more food friendly. And I'm, a traditionalist. I really like the idea of drinking my wine with my food and pairing it and seeing how the food and the wine benefit from a good pairing. So obviously I'm a huge fan of the Chardonnay, and I'm really glad that Dave McIntyre at the Washington Post agrees with me, because it's nice. It's nice to not to be out on that limb by myself.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I like it. So I see Cara is asking here, where is Backsberg in South Africa? Now, for anyone who's been to South Africa, or those of you who will eventually get there, when you go to Cape Town and you're asking a Cape Townian for directions, you'll find a very common theme as well. They'll start with, well, the first thing you want to do is head towards the mountain. They're referring to Table Mountain. So the first thing you want to do when going to Backsberg is head away from the mountain, because we're just outside. And if you look at this map that's on the screen now, you'll see Cape Town sort of on the left. So you would fly into Cape Town, the mother city of South Africa, and you'll see beautiful Table Mountain. You're going to drive out sort of northeast to the city of Paarl. So if you follow up there in the red, the sort of darker red section there, that is the area that we are located in. Just outside of Paarl, actually, a little bit towards the south of the diagram that you see there. Backsberg itself sits pretty much right in the middle of three of South Africa's big wine-producing regions, Stellenbosch, Paarl, and Franschhoek. The winery is almost exactly equidistant between those three. So roughly 45 minutes drive outside of Cape Town, in the middle of the winelands. This province that we're looking at now on the South Africa wine map is called the Western Cape, and 95% of South African wine is grown in this province. It's then split up into a bunch of regions and districts. We won't get into that now, a little bit more technical. But the Paarl side of things, a little bit warmer. That's why we're able to do some fantastic Chardonnay like this. And I'm going to tell you a story now, which don't quote me on, because there's a lot of dispute on this. But Backsberg was actually one of the first commercial producers of Chardonnay in South Africa, because in the 70s, Chardonnay was not an approved variety to grow in South Africa. Our version of the FDA or the TTP hadn't approved the growing of Chardonnay. But some winemakers who had been overseas and had some international experience wanted to trial the grapes, so they smuggled in some vine clippings to plant and grow and work with it. One of those was Sydney Back, the second generation owner of Backsberg, and another producer from a different region of Stellenbosch of South Africa, which I won't name because, again, it's not a factually correct story, but I'm going to tell you anyway. They both bought them and planted at the same time, and 3 years later produced a wine. The other winery beat Backsberg to the chase. So they were given credit as being the first Chardonnay producer, but it was later discovered that they actually had not planted Chardonnay. They had some kind of weird clone crossing, which turned out to be some really weird, obscure white grape. So in memoriam, Backsberg was awarded the honor of being the first Chardonnay producer in South Africa, which I think is a really cool story. And we still have some pretty old vineyards on a satellite vineyard just down the road from our estate, which we use in one of our higher end Chardonnays. And it's just, I think, a wine that grows really, really well in the Paarl region, along with some of the red wines like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Shiraz, which are synonymous with the area. And it's one that we're really proud of, and we've done pretty much since day one.
Well, I appreciate that you brought these wines to us, and I think they're all delicious. But the reality is we could have another dozen wines from Marquee up here, and they'd be just as delicious. You guys do a great job. And we're really, really happy to be associated with you and to be able to represent your wines. And looking forward to bringing some of them into Delaware in the near future as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. I can't wait to get out there. And hopefully once all of this calms down, I'll be able to fly out and we can do some driving around, and we can get some, as I once heard a Texan tell me, get some liquid to lips, get some juice in the glass and get people drinking.
That would be great.
And I love this question here, this last question. I think this is the perfect way for us to finish this off, Alan. I'm going to leave you with this tidbit. So winey lover, what's the best glass to drink this with? Anything is a wine glass if you want it bad enough. That's how I live my life.
Agreed.
There you go.
Absolutely agreed. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you being on with me tonight, Bryce. And it was a lot of fun. And
yeah.
And if I shouldn't say I hope we can do it again soon. I know we're going to do it again soon. I think you're going to be back doing Virtual Vino with us on November 13th. So really looking forward to that. And appreciate Gustavo being on as well. Thanks again to Gustavo. And I'll be talking to you again very soon, Bryce.
Awesome. I'm excited. Again, Alan, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always a treat.
Thanks, Bryce. Cheers.
Cool. Have a good one. Cheers.
Okay, so thank you everybody for watching. I want to talk about next week's wines, and I saw the picture up there. There we go. So next week is going to be our Halloween Virtual Vino, and we're going to be featuring the Time Waits for No One, which is a 95-point Monastral from the Humida region of Spain. Also a 92-point Vinous Occult Malbec from Mendoza, and two miniature wines, the Tusser Jumper Chardonnay and Tusser Jumper Pinot Noir. And these little wines are absolutely ideal for handing out as treats on Halloween for adults, obviously. But I think that they would be an absolute perfect handout on Halloween. And our guest that night is going to be Sky White from the band Foxy Shazam. So maybe we'll have a little music as well. And it should be a really, really interesting show. You can see on the picture there some of the stores that are carrying the wines, and hopefully there will be more as well. And you'll be able to hopefully pick them up in our nice blue Virtual Vino bag and with the tasting sheet as well. If you're having trouble finding our wines, please don't hesitate to call DMV or to Facebook message us, email us, what have you, and we'll be happy to help you find the wines from Virtual Vino. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and I really hope that you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next week on Virtual Vino. Cheers.